You're listening to the ESU Visiting Writers Series.
Hello, I'm Kevin Ravis here with Kansas City filmmaker Jason Turner, who is a producer, a director, an actor, and more, and he's visiting Emporia State today. Welcome, Jason.
Good morning, Emporia. How you doing?
I'm so glad you're here to talk with our classes today. And one of the things I wanted to kick it off with is you move across genres and truly develop an idea. For instance, with Iron Detective, it's a paper comic book, a motion comic, a short narrative film, and maybe next a feature-length film. Tell me a little bit about the development of that character.
Oh, yes. So the Iron Detective started off as a high school sketch, and it turned into a comic book, and it was very influenced by RoboCop, The Terminator, Blade Runner, Star Wars, and just all kinds of sci-fi, film noir type stuff. And I found it as a very good escape. I'm a very shy, introverted person for the most part, and it was easy to hide behind a metal mask so people couldn't see what I was really feeling. And I'm also kind of into the Excalibur legend. So the character's name is Alex Caliborn, and if you look in the name, his name is Excalibur or Excalibur. So he's kind of a knight errant, a wandering knight, and he gets into adventures and sometimes gets into trouble.
Rock on, that's wonderful. You know, we talked a little bit today about making community as filmmakers and how it takes a community or a village to get something made. Tell me a little bit about the Kansas City filmmaking community.
So I am a part of the Kansas City filmmaking community, and I've been a part of it for as long as I can remember now. And it's a vibrant, thriving community. There's a lot of talented people there. And I am proud to say that a lot of the filmmakers that I've worked with are so kind, and it's like a family. It is actually having another family. And one thing that I expressed to some students earlier is that when you get into the filmmaking business or industry, it's like getting into a relationship. I mean, it is a very, very personal and patience testing industry. And I find that the Kansas City film scene is fantastic. We have fantastic locations. We have city, we have the West Bottoms, we have downtown, we have the Independent Filmmakers Coalition, we have Kansas City Women in Film, we have a fantastic theater community as well. And sometimes there's some cross-pollination. I would love to see more theater and more filmmaking types work together. And for example, one of our good friends, Jessica Whitfield, who was a guest on this podcast recently. She is a playwright, but she's also an actress, and she's also worked with Andrea Dover and myself on some other projects. And we just kind of, sometimes we sit around and it's like, hey, what would be a cool idea that we can set in Kansas City? Because we've seen a million stories in New York. We've seen a million stories in Los Angeles. And yeah, those are great, but there's a lot going on in the middle of the country as well. So.
Right. What are some of your favorite things about this region when it comes to artistically or in terms of just culture and being a part of this region?
I say this with risk, but I do like barbecue. I love Kansas City barbecue, but I also love the fact that there's a lot of just really cool people here. You have people that are very creative, but you also have people that are, blue collar, and they're just like, they appreciate creative people. And I appreciate that this is such a welcoming community, and I've been blessed by having so many people give their time and advice to me over the years. I've worked with people such as Patrick Ray. I've worked with Chad Crenshaw, Davis DeRock. I've worked with, Lonita Cook. I've worked with Jeffrey Staub. I've worked with so many different talented people, and I'm happy to say that there's so much more here. I mean, it's like I've been doing this for so long, but it's like it still kind of feels like it's getting started, if that makes sense. And there are productions that are coming through. They're taking advantage of the new tax incentives. And to me, Kansas itself has a wide variety of locations. You have suburban, you have, the city, you have rural, you have the Flint Hills. There's a filmmaker named Nicholas James who did a film called Found Wandering Lost. And that was kind of a crime road movie, and it was set in the Flint Hills. And not a lot of people see that. And he took advantage of this, of this fantastic location that we have access to.
Right. Today you visited a class or two. What are some things you gleaned from that experience, things that were takeaways or things you might want to say that you didn't get said in about an hour each time?
I would say that most students at this point in their life are probably just trying to figure things out. And there's so many options. And more importantly, there's so many distractions. You've got to kind of be true to yourself and just kind of figure out what's going to do things for you. For example, if you are a major in English, you got to love English. You got to read books. You've got to, be passionate about it, and don't let anybody take that passion away from you, because passion is what gives us, a lot of things. I saw in your office that you have a copy of Dead Poets Society. Great movie. And there's a great message in that story. You cannot squash other people's passion. You have to embrace other people's passion, and maybe you guys will be passionate together and you'll figure out a story that is like, wow, if we combine our resources, and we combine this great barbecue, that we have, we can make a movie about, a vegan barbecue chef or something, just whatever. But I'm kind of quoting Alex Ferrari. He's a fantastic indie film producer. But, I think the main thing about Kansas City and Kansas and Missouri and basically this whole area is that there's a lot of creative talent here, and people just have to embrace it. And I think there's enough negativity in the world that creating some art lets us be therapeutic about it. I created a comic book because of a dark time I was having in my life, and I expressed that passion through a comic book. And the Iron Detective is kind of like my Batman, and, Alex Caliborn is the Bruce Wayne of that story. But it's also, it's a lot of fun because I've had people come and help me. I've had a friend, Tim Hensela, who did the fantastic armor work. He loved my design. I met him at Planet Comic-Con. He loved my design and said, hey man, I can make that helmet for real in metal. You want to try it? And I was like, I don't know, can we? And we did it, and it was great. I've also worked with the Ronin Stunt Company. That's a fantastic local stunt company based in Kansas City. That's here in our city. It's professional. And what I don't see enough of is people taking it seriously. I'm not going to mention their name, but there's a friend of ours who said that a lot of filmmaking around here seems to be kids with cameras. And I'm guilty of that. I was that kid with the camera, and I got in a lot of trouble doing that stuff, but I survived. People have to take it seriously. You have to understand the craft. You have to understand that, you have to consider safety. Being in a film movie set is kind of like being a construction crew with a camera. You have to have so many permission. You have to have so much in place before you can actually, pull the trigger and start shooting something. And you have to have a good screenplay as well. So if you're a writer, develop those writing skills, read other books. If you have a favorite movie, reverse engineer it. Watch that movie and then get a copy of the screenplay and say, oh, that's how they showed that shot, or, oh, that's how that character got to this point. Because at this point in the action line, they said, she dropped the book on his toe and suddenly there was a huge, crash of laughter, There's all kinds of ways to study the arts and make it something that people will embrace and be, because that's what gives us, charm. A lot, like we were talking about Star Wars earlier. Star Wars was a big turning point for a lot of people, and it's still relevant to this day. It's never going away because it was such a fantastic impact on pop culture. I was born the year Star Wars came out, so that's like part of my DNA.
Yeah. Maybe give us one other favorite movie and why you like it, and maybe one last tip, and then we'll sign off.
Okay. I would say, of course, my favorite movie of all time is the original Blade Runner, Ridley Scott. It's a close second to Alien and Aliens, second and third. But Blade Runner is a fantastic film because it is a movie about life. It is a movie about humanity. And it's like a comic book film. It was, based on, French comic books, and, H.R. Giger did Alien. And then some of that art from the heavy metal kind of bleeded over into Ridley Scott's, film. And also Harrison Ford at the time, top of his career. He just came off of, Star Wars, and he just came off of Indiana Jones. But it's like, I feel that it's his best role of that time because it was so different from what he was doing. He wasn't doing a popcorn film. He was doing a movie about a guy that was an alcoholic detective, you know, and it was like, this is like, people weren't ready for that. But now, years later, people appreciate that movie. And if you read the book by Paul M. Salmon, Future Noir, The Making of Blade Runner, that was my film school. I learned a lot about filmmaking just by reading that book, watching the film, and listening to the commentary. And there's value in digging up those old archives and learning about things.
Well, thank you for being with me and with us today. And we will look forward to your next projects.
Yes, I had a great time here, and I'm so happy to talk with students, and they can get a hold of me, you know, through you if they have any other questions. But I'm having a great time, and I appreciate you inviting me.
Thanks for being a part of Emporia State today.
All right.